Hey, and welcome back to another episode. Did you know that 35% of salespeople are out of the profession by age 35? And most professionals quietly lose about 1/3 of their lifetime earnings simply because of poor career navigation. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Deepak Bhootra, a sales career longevity advisor who spent 34 years in the corporate world before dedicating himself to fixing these exact problems. He's an ICF-certified coach who's guided over 1,500 professionals and founded up Rise Up, a game-changing career platform built specifically for young professionals who can't afford traditional coaching. So if you want a long, successful, and profitable career, this episode is for you. So Deepak, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
So we all just heard your incredible read-in and intro and bio, but why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So this is one of those moments which you'll regret. Tim, never give Deepak the microphone. He's not going to give it back to you. Tim, born and raised in India. My dad was remarkable in the sense that he was a forensic pathologist, right? And he traveled the world. So because of him, I lived in Libya for 3 years, Trinidad and Tobago for 3 years, and it's endless. What that did was it made me a corporate nomad. So I'm one of the few guys that actually has 4 degrees from 4 continents and has lived and worked in 6 countries. India, Singapore, South Africa, Libya, and so on and so on. So I consider myself a global citizen. What that does, though, is, Tim, it gives me a great lens. One is that every time I meet someone new, I'm really intrigued. I want to know more. And I never come in with a solution. I always go in knowing that I'm going to figure a solution out. It's just one of those mindsets. Got introduced to sales, really enjoyed sales, got burnt out, exited sales, went into sales operations. And after 34 years, I exited the corporate world, Tim. And now I find myself figuring out feast to famine, figuring out how to be an entrepreneur. And then along the way, the startup bug bit me. So I'm busy with something there as well. And honestly, at age 55, people are asking me, are you sure you shouldn't just have relaxed and retired? I'm like, nah, next life.
I don't believe in retirement either. I believe in repurposing and retooling. So you've been around the globe. You're a global citizen. You've been there. You've done that. And I'm starting to find out as I talk to folks, the more things change, more things stay the same. And so are you finding the same thing when you're talking to folks about leadership and development, or even when they enter into the marketplace?
Tim, you know what really funny is? I have a 28 and a 26-year-old. Just let me tell you what I'm seeing. 34 years ago when I was like 21, right? And I started my career journey, I would call my dad and I would actually tell him, I don't understand this. I don't understand. My boss is this. My boss is lousy this. He doesn't have time for me, so on and so on. So fast forward, we've had, what do you say, like 30 years of so much has changed in the world. So much has happened, automation, AI and stuff. And this is the conversation with my 2 sons from work. I don't get it. I was in a meeting today and my colleague spoke about my idea as if it's his. Is that normal, Dad? Does that happen all the time? I'm like, okay, keep going. Next day, one calls and says, I don't know. I was in a meeting and the boss said, who can work the next weekends? And everyone just looked at me and I just naturally says, hey, me, Dad, I got to work 3 weekends in a row because we're doing a release and I need to be there for the bill for my customers. And I just smiled. And then one calls and says, I was in a meeting and my boss said to me, you got to change your body language. I need people that show more power through body language. You need to work on it. And my son says, what does that even mean? So Tim, essentially what I'm trying to tell you is that the more that things change, they stay the same, means that humanity has really still not figured out the leadership dichotomy, how to navigate world, right? The world. You have people that are preparing for college. We think we have done great. And then you enter the real world and you suddenly realize that college didn't prepare you for anything. Nothing. And here we are. So the point I'm making is that for anyone listening in, right? And anyone who thinks that AI is going to give them the wings to fly, trust me, that AI is going to give wings to fly to everyone. Now, altitude depends on your attitude. So baby, go get your attitude and AI ain't going to give you attitude.
So let's talk about the dichotomy with your bosses and in the workplace. We often hear people say nebulous things like, you need to work on your body language. You need to work on your tone. You need to work on your presence. But what does that really mean? And is that really helpful for folks?
I'm going to be so cruel right now. Tim, you're going to tell me, how we got to edit this out. Tim, at the end of the day, I realized one thing. You can improve your body language, you can improve your tone and stuff. The reality is that you need to understand you're not playing for an audience of 100. You're playing for an audience of 2 or 3, which is your leadership. If you have ambition, then what I've told people is that, you can go and tell people, what should I improve? How should focus on managing upwards. When you're managing upwards, listen to exactly what that individual wants. Because when I've done some maths, in the long run, you will make money, you'll make more money, you'll retire with more money if you actually adapt to the person above you or to the leadership above you. When you decide not to adapt to the leadership above you, and it's not, I mean, you're a military guy, right, Tim, right? You guys take certain principles, right? You know when you're given an illegal order. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm simply telling that you have a certain faith, you have a certain style, you know how to distinguish tone from messaging. And I think the message I would give to people is, if you want to be successful in your career, don't try to become things that you're not. Focus on becoming something that someone wants of you, that you can deliver the most value. I know it's an extremely selfish thing to say, but my game plan is that, people tell me, I want to do this course, I want to do this course, I want to do this course. I ask him, when you sat with your boss, what did he tell you he thinks holds you up? And I can assure you, once you figured one boss out, the next boss is going to come and tell you 180 degrees opposite. Because that's standard. So if you have to conserve energy and understanding what keeps you in your job, how to ensure what will keep you in your job. And if you want to keep growing, and it's not about playing politics, Tim, I don't know how to say this to you, but it's about diplomacy. Understanding that the very people that are going to help you grow. And if you have no ambition, you still need to learn how to manage your boss. That'll give you a lot of peace of mind. So a bit of a non-classical answer there, forgive me.
I want to tease that out a little bit more about managing upwards, because some people say, well, you got to manage your bosses. You kind of have to, understand your boss. And I'm all for that. But what do you mean by managing up?
Managing up, let's just break this. You're asking that question because there's an aura around it. It's like mental health. The second you say the word mental health, people kind of shrink back. No one actually leans in. Those who lean in have empathy. They know what's going on because they have felt it as well. So let's talk about managing upwards. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Managing upwards, and I kind of alluded to it, it's being diplomatic. It's not about being political. It also means that you're focused on making it win-win for both parties. That's very important. At the end of the day, I always tell people one thing, that if someone is asking something of you, right, and you feel that his tone is off, my goal always is focus on the message first, bring the tone in later, because tone always adds emotion to it. So managing upward is a series of things. It is one, understanding what your boss is doing in the broader constellation of things, then figure out how you support those actions by being part of the same constellation, but maybe in a different position. As you start figuring that out, it starts making sense to you. Now your goal is, how do I line up all these planets to ensure that we are conserving energy and we're getting exactly what we need? So managing upwards to me is a intentional method of working with leadership, with structure, with decisiveness, rather than leaving things to chance. It simply means that you actually put in the effort to understand how your boss works, how your boss thinks. Two, doing it this way also means that you can also show him how you operate, how you do things by mapping your actions to his. And I must be honest with you, the 3 top bosses I had, Tim, were a pain in the backside. They made me change a lot. But when I sit back and think about it, because I used to be a coach and I was coaching people on the side, I actually also knew the value of biting your tongue, hold back and pause. In sales, Tim, in selling, we talk about the fact that customer says your price is crap. And first reaction you have is, look, at the end of the day, what budget do you have? I can beat it, I can match it. And there you are. You left money on the table right there. It's the same thing. People never pause to actually stop and ask themselves the question, what does this man or woman want from me and why? Unless it's an illegal order, try to figure it out and then do it. And figure out a way to change to do it for the better.
For the younger folks listening to this right now, I see a lot of them going into the workplace. They have these great ideas, these big things they want to change. And they're like, hey, we're going to do all of these things. And the leadership is like, no, we're not. We're not going to do those things. And then they don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. And then they're left trying to navigate, well, how do I succeed? What does success look like? And you brought up a really good point about value, finding a place that you deliver the most value, and what is it that people get from. I want to talk a little bit more about that if you could.
Yeah, sure. Look, at the end of the day, Tim, I cannot beat we use the word values earlier in a different way, but let's just talk about it. Where the disjoint coming from? I want to do something that I like, but my leadership wants me to do something that they need. Right there is the gap, right? Now, I built my career by actually doing things that I wanted to do, but I delivered the value that my leadership wanted from them. My very first promotion was at one, I hate Excel. I really do. My son hates it, but I acknowledge it's a powerful tool. So when I started my career, I used to work in transport, right, Tim? And I was sitting in meetings and I heard my bosses complaining about the fact that the load factor was so bad that they were making a loss on the Johannesburg to Cape Town run, as an example. So I walked away and asked myself a simple question. That's an interesting problem. Why is that happening? So the first thing I fired at was a tool I hated, which is Excel. I sat down and I started looking at the numbers and I said, how can I look at this in a way that I can go back and try? My goal actually was not to make my leadership happy. My goal was to actually first understand, see if there's a solution. And if I could find something, then I'll talk to someone about it. And as I was sitting there playing out the numbers, guess who walks by? The senior most guy, my boss's boss's boss. And he says to me, 7 p.m., what are you doing? And I said to him, no, I was in a meeting today and there was this topic that came up. I don't know much about the topic, but I really felt intrigued to see what was the issue with the load factor. And he said to me, show me what you're doing. He sits down next to me. Tim, the next 30 minutes changed my life's trajectory because he also got excited. And he started telling me, no, change this formula here. Change this scenario here. Oh, wait. And it hit both of us at the same time. The reason why that sector was in so much trouble was we were going down profitable, but then the brokers there would then find any deal to get the truck back quickly to Johannesburg, and they would take any amount because someone told them a idle truck is a bad truck. So they would then put anything onto it to make the numbers run. So your utility rate was higher, 80%, 90% of the time the vehicle must be moving, but it's moving with absolute nonsense on it. So essentially what you're doing is that there's a cost to bring something back, an empty truck. You think you're recovering part of it, but the overall number is still negative. So now the question is, and that's when it hit him. He immediately went the next day and actually called up the brokers and told them, here's an instruction. This is what I need you guys to do. I will pay you 10% commission more, but I need minimum payload to look like this. For me, that was a revelation right there. I don't like Excel. I didn't know what I was doing, but I actually knew that there was something I wanted to help the company with. And I think that's what I would like to call people out. You want to do your projects, yes, but you can still take ownership of projects that you feel can add value. The goal here is don't do in isolation. Do something that resonates. That's why I'm a big fan of Lean Six Sigma, Tim. When you do Lean Six Sigma training, it forces you to look around you and what can you optimize or improve. And if you're looking around closely, you're going to find something that makes a difference in one of your team members' life or your life. Fix it and then show the world you fixed it. So this is it. It's like a plate of food. At the end of the day, Tim, you need your calories. You may not like the carrots and the Brussels sprouts, but guess what? You know, man, this is a blessing. Just eat and move on. And that's what I think people need to understand. Having a job is actually a privilege. And I say this, Tim, with utter respect. I'm not telling anyone that, think you're a corporate guy or you're. Every morning I wake up, Tim, and you're seeing 30,000 people being chucked off the cliff, 3,000 people being chucked off the cliff, right? And guess what? I've been thrown off a cliff twice. And when I was thrown off that cliff, I can tell you right now, my voice chokes, Tim, because I was not the same. So I pity those 50, 60,000, 100,000 people that I may not know their names, but there is something that's happening out there. So I always tell people, drop the false pretenses, understand, connect in such a way that you become a connective tissue. Sometimes it's like the Avatar movie, right? Everyone has something and you just take your ponytail and you can attach it to any animal and you then control the animal. The animal may be a difficult one to ride, but the intent is still, and that's the issue that I'm talking about over here. Sorry, a bit of a long-winded answer, but Tim, you asked a powerful question. I couldn't resist.
I appreciate you sharing that because it's incredibly important that people understand, one, the fact that you have a job is amazing and a blessing in itself. And then two, how you come up to bring value in the company. And so we've talked about, who you are as a person, you're getting into entry level, you're looking at leadership, you're working with your leadership, but there still seems to be a systemic break in that process, right? We've talked about how 30 years later, we still are encountering the same problem, but I don't think we've really defined what that problem is. So in your opinion, what do you think that problem is?
I look at it this way. Just pick up your balance sheet, Tim. Where do you say human being on it? We call human capital, but it never appears on the P&L. The entire system is geared towards, we talk about sweating assets. We know intuitively what that means. But at the end of the day, when at 5 o'clock you go to a building, it's got a logo of a company on the side of it, but the building is empty. And it feels soulless. Ultimately, it's people. Where has leadership failed? Here's my take. We were told 20 years ago that, automation will uplift humanity. 4 years ago, I was told that AI is going to make us smarter. All that's happening is actually that these things have actually taught me one thing, that's more important to remember humanity. And in the process, we keep forgetting our humanity. I was then told we're going to do rank and stank, right, in companies' performance management, right? Tim, we were told that you accept a rating and 10% of the people getting the low rating are going to be fired. And everyone applauded them. Wall Street applauded them. And the reality is that now comes AI. The very same company that do performance ranking are still throwing you off the cliff anyway because AI is a threat. Then you have tariffs. So they still throw you off the cliff. So the question is, wait. What's going on here? I was told that if you perform very well and you remain at the top, we're going to keep you. But when things change, you throw me off the cliff anyway. At the end of the day, you're fodder. You're cannon fodder, as we put it, right? Very crudely. So is it a negative to be in a company? No, it's not. Do we need to change, adapt to it? Yes, we do. But in a post-COVID world, the caution that I'm seeing right now is that, Tim, you're looking at a group of leaders, and I'm talking about the 21 to 25 post-COVID, who actually come with a different mindset. They actually want to spend more time working from home. They actually want a value system that a company delivers on. And there's a simple thing, and that simple thing is as follows. Tim, 10, 20 years ago, when someone came to you and says, Tim, give me 5 interview questions, one question you'd give them was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Recruit asking it, you're going to ask yourself, this recruit is just passing the time. What nonsense. There is your answer right there, Tim. We live in an era of immense change where I think that we think we have solved something, actually not solved something, because this is just one of those moving puzzles. Leadership issues remain because human beings remain emotional at the core. And I think that's it. The illusion from automation is that we all going to eat Nazi cookies because the factory makes exactly the same. The problem is the workers there have a different temperament, but we've allowed automation to deceive us. And it's to me, this is a very emotional conversation that we could possibly have on this. But yes, sir, back to you.
I want to expand upon that a little bit more, because at the heart of what I do is all about people and making sure that people remain the focus of what we do. Because without people, you don't have a business. No matter how much automation or robots you have, they can't do certain things. So when we focus on the people and the people are like, hey, I want some guidance, and the senior folks are like, well, I'm providing it for you. And there seems to be a disconnect between the guidance that they're providing versus the guidance that the junior folks are requesting. And I'm finding that it's not necessarily that either side is wrong. There's a communication problem. So how do we bridge that gap?
Let me bring in my experience with sales first, right, Tim? That's my bread and butter. Let's look at selling as an example. In selling, we spent the 80s and the 90s banging on and on about the stick or carrot approach. You speak to any salesperson in that era and they'll likely tell you the way that companies operated was very simple. The stick and the carrot felt exactly the same way being administered. You always ended up walking with the pain in your backside. So that shocked me first, right? Now, fast forward. The people in the 80s, 90s, 2000s that were trained on that type of system are now leadership today. So this leadership is now being told, let's be politically correct. You have to use the right pronouns. You have to do this. But in the core of their being, they've been raised in a certain way when it comes to leadership. In sales in particular, if I'm going to focus on numbers and outputs, that makes me a great sales leader. Because it's expected of me that when the leadership at the top puts a boot on my neck, my imprint of my boot has to be on the next neck. And it is accepted. Why is it accepted is a question I asked someone, and here was the answer. I pay the bugger tons of money, Deepak. With that type of money, he better deliver. And I said, that's amazing. Let's assume that he gets hit by a car and he's bleeding to the side of the road. And we need to figure out how to get him to hospital. Are you going to stand at that point and say, hey, he makes so much money, let him do it himself? We don't, because basic humanity tells us just because someone makes a lot of money doesn't mean that you can abuse them. So that mindset is a powerful one. Too hierarchical, right? At the end of the day, hierarchy gives you this presence that you think that you own everything. And I've always told leaders are there because followers are there. And understand that. So I always reverse the definition of, for me, great followership makes leadership. Now you could argue, but Deepak, isn't a great leader first going to cultivate those followers? That is true. But you need to have understanding. And I would say the people call it servant leadership. I've always called it the understanding that you are in a position of greatness because someone allowed you to be in that position of greatness. Never forget that. So did that answer the question? I don't know, but I'm trying to actually just, give you a perspective of what I think and how I feel about it.
Let's talk about the hierarchyship, because lately I keep hearing, let's flatten the organization, but things don't get better either. So what does it mean when people say, well, let's flatten the organization?
But Tim, here's the problem, right? We just a few minutes back acknowledged we're human. When you flatten the organization, you're simply doing something very simple. It's called mathematically, you're increasing the span of control. This is going to make you weep. Sir, in my bachelor's degree, one of the papers that I read was actually called Greikuna's theorem. The man was kind enough to actually tell us at what point does your span of control lead to everyone falling apart. And if I recall it, his formula was very easy: workload, complexity, and so on, and time to be spent by people and stuff. That question came in the examination paper, and I spoke and wrote a lot about it because I really was thrilled by this idea. Here's the reality. As you do flattening, everyone thinks is being happening due to automation. No, it's happening because of economic considerations. When your competition takes a ratio from one leader to 7 reportees to 11, everyone follows that because that now becomes a new benchmark. You now have an era where, and I'm saying this with all respect to, when I talk to some people in software engineering and other places, you have 30 people reporting to one manager. In sales, you have 7 salespeople reporting to one manager because someone decided these are the right ratios. Because we need to have this because the more managers are very costly to the system. Here's the reality though. Human beings and society were actually built on leadership principles. Tribal knowledge and tribal relationships required you to have a hierarchy. You had a shaman, you have a head shaman, you have then a council chief, then you have a village head, then you have a geographic. That was the design because people ultimately knew that human beings need a certain structure in which to operate. Now you have a situation where you have performance reviews. Just do the maths, Tim. I fell over laughing. You need to have a quarterly review. You have 25 people. They need to do a quarterly review. Each of them has to prep for it. So do you. Do the maths and you suddenly realize that the man's constantly just going to do performance management. No, he doesn't. Because he's got a business to run. So when you do the maths and you actually realize that when you honestly ask them, how much time are you going to give to your employee? He says maybe 10% of my time. Tim, immediately you know the problem right there. 25 people report to you. You only give 10% of your time. That's 4 hours a week. 25 people only get one-on-one time with you only 4 hours. And that's besides the fact that you sometimes have to sit with people one-on-one to tell them what to do. Forget asking someone, how are you feeling today? That pulse we talk about, companies do pulse surveys, right? What is a pulse? It's not, and Tim, again, I'm digressing a slight here, but just think about it. That's the issue. So as we flattened the organization, it was predicated on tools, technology, and so on. But we kind of forgot there's this third element, which is called people. And people actually want to find time to talk to other people. And there we go. You just change the ratio, you change the maths. And by the way, guess what? The great disappearing middle manager. That's exactly what you just called out. That's how Fortune, one of the articles I read, and I said to myself, spot on. The great disappearing middle manager is actually the one that wiped out whatever opportunity a majority of people had to actually buy a house, maintain a family. And it's not just the US, globally that's happened. It's a function. You've actually got a very large, that's why you have it's not a pyramid anymore. It's not a pyramid. It's more like an hourglass. And then it broadens at the top again.
You're absolutely spot on with that. So I've recently talked to folks and somebody was like, yeah, I had like 300 direct reports. I was like, how do you manage 300 direct reports? And it was a very large global, business. I was like, how do you manage 300 direct reports? Like I've led, large organizations myself, but as far as direct reports, like it's like on one hand, so that's crazy to me that we have businesses and demanding that of people.
Tim, you're onto something. Just think about it. I look at all the shared services in the global back offices, right? When you hear that loud sucking sound of cost arbitrage, that the Western world lost all those jobs to back offices in India, Philippines, Pakistan, South Africa, and other places. Forget the political storm or the economic storm for 1 second. Those models work because you only have now a group of 20, 25-year-olds doing very complex work, which has now been broken down by division of labor. It's not building or designing a rocket anymore. The guy only paints the number 6 on Apollo 6. That's it. And he keeps painting it. So he's become myopic and only focus on that. So now you got a situation where you have all these people. Now you have one person on top. And by the way, the 26-year-olds on average now have a 28-year-old on top of them because leadership is smart. Why bring in a manager that's 40 years old and needs $200,000 to survive when we can get someone who's 85K, and he says, we'll work US hours at night, leading to so much bodily harm over 2, 3, 5 years. You now have a vast army created out there of, and I'm going to say, careful how I say this, the young, semi-blind, being led by young plus 1 year, also semi-blind. And you know that, Tim, two blinds don't make, how do you say this? I don't know how to say this, but you see what's happening here. This is what I call the dummification of the entire social construct that we were arguing would set us free, has actually just spiraled out of control. And here's the bad news. You can't stop it. Because when one company says that we are dumping 30K because AI is helping us, everyone else says, well, if AI is helping them, it's going to help us as well. So everyone in good faith is acting out. And that's what happens. Right? That's why they say, right, Tim, when everyone's dumping your shares, you hold on to yours because things are going to change.
I want to go back to this tribal knowledge thing and mentorship, because you just mentioned about the blind leading the blind. I'll say it. It's okay. The blind leading the blind, and then they're going in a direction and might not be the right direction. And you have very few people providing that mentorship and that guidance. And usually it was like the little old lady in sneakers somewhere, or the old man, who was just like off in the corner, and everybody knew that, like, if you wanted to know something historically or tribal about the organization, that's where you went. And that is going away. And I was just curious about your thought of how should we bring that back? And if we do bring that back, how do we bring that back?
I'm going to be very careful how I answer this, because I'm going to get banned by you permanently.
No.
Tim, we just got a bad trade. Just think about it. You're spot on. Mentorship used to be about finding the person with the most wisdom, most experience, and asking him, I am struggling. How can I do this better? Hey, what is mentorship? Mentorship is, I am struggling. I need to get better. But at the same time, I want to work for a promotion. So I was told that to get a promotion, I should find a mentor. And they told me that you are the kingmaker or the rainmaker. Wait, stop. So what happened here? Previously, people used to find mentors so that they could better at their jobs. Now people are looking for mentors so that they can navigate through their jobs. Do you see what just happened there, boss? We used to need people that were lady in the sneakers, right? Because there was no pretense. You actually were going through with a genuine. Now comes the bad news. The lady in the sneakers, hold on. It's like a professor. You go into a class, economics. The guy came to work on a beaten up Vespa or Piaggio scooter. And his course actually is called investments. You sit in the class and you are looking at his mathematics and formulas and saying, I'm going to make $1 million. Oh, love that formula. I'm going to build it into an algorithm and I'm going to trade shares. Stop and ask yourself a simple question. You're learning something from a guy that has shown you that he's not been able to deploy those same things to his own betterment. Do you think he's going to be your mentor? The answer is no. And that's exactly what's happening in the corporate world. Betsy, with her nice, lovely pink shoes, who's been 60 years in the business, used to be very valued and cherished. But today people look at her and say, she's never grown in the organization. Why should I learn from her? I want to go and learn from people that grew, people that can show me how to navigate. So now you have got a very vicious reality that's going on out there. It's not coaching anymore. If anyone tells you that they're coaching at work, I just smile very quietly. It's all, I have a specific objective. I am going up and saying, I'd love to have you as a mentor. You think very differently. And then the very next sentence is, oh, and by the way, if an opportunity in a team comes up that I can get promoted into, I would love for you to consider me for that. You have already gone in and told me coaching and mentorship work if it is both parties benefit from each other. And here's a scenario where you're actually starting off by telling the whole world. And that's a really, really important point, Tim, that I just wanted to put onto the table with you as well.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because in a world where we used to be an inch wide and a mile deep, we're now a mile wide and an inch deep. And I think we need to get back to the other, or a healthy balance between the two. And we talked about a lot of problems, but given your background, we also have solutions, and the show is about practicality. So I'm pretty sure you have a framework, and I would like for you to take some time and explain your framework of how we can get past this.
Tim, and the reality is that in any situation, you need to start off by first saying, do I understand where I find myself? And you'll be surprised. So I just call it rise up, to put it in simple terms, which happens to be the title of the book I wrote. But when I was looking at the way that I used to look at things, it's first recognize where you are. Just first acknowledge. Self-awareness is so powerful, Tim. Can you imagine, Tim, getting people to actually slow down and actually say that, you know what, maybe my style is the problem here? First, you need to recognize. You need to first admit to yourself that there's an issue that needs to be fixing. In my career, I realized one thing, Tim. When people walk in and tell me, Deepak, I've realized that I lose deals higher rate than others. I need to do something about it. Right there, I say, good. Because until your house ain't on fire, you're not going to understand the value of water. You just won't. And I've always tried to explain that to people. So in sales also, right, Tim, you go to sell something to someone, but if he doesn't have the pain that your problem solves, he ain't going to buy from you. So find people that understand their pain and now want to do something about it. So the first thing we need to do after that is what I call, you got the R, the right, rise up, the R, recognize. The I is interrupt. Stop and ask yourself, is what I'm doing going to last me forever? Yes or no? Once you've done that identification and you figure out what is it that you do very well, then you strengthen that element to it. Just strengthen that. And once you start strengthening it, the next element I tell people is that now you've figured out. So let's do a strengths weakness analysis, right, Tim? It's like a plate of food. I know I hate broccoli, right? So we figured out a strategy. And the strength is that I'm disciplined. So therefore, eat the broccoli first. Now sit down with your T-bone steak and like, oh, yeah, mushroom sauce. Here you are. Oh, yeah, slowly chew it and enjoy it. Wash out the filth of the broccoli from your mouth if necessary. Let's call it that, right? Take it from there. Next is once you've done that, you start expanding on it. Now that you become good at eating your T-bone steak, how can you take that very same trick to other people and so on as well? And this is what I try to keep telling people. This is what you need to do. Then you move upwards and then you propel your career. Propel means you've now established your strengths that are going to now mitigate your weaknesses, Tim. And when you do that, you now start asking yourself, I have done the expansion. I've understood that, right? I'm now moving upwards, but now I need to propel my career. That means that you need to first go back and look at your assets and reclass them. Are these assets going to help you as you go forward? Now, underneath each of these, we have frameworks, right? And one of my favorite frameworks, which I just fall over laughing, is so simple, Tim, because every customer brings that problem to me. My boss sucks. I'm considering leaving the job. And Tim, to make this very practical for your listeners, I say, okay, cool. Let's talk about what we call the push-pull model. And someone says to me, the what? Push-pull. Are you being attracted to a job? And the guy says, no, nothing's pulling me. Like I just said, my boss is the guy. So I said, okay, so you're being repelled from something. So that's a push away from something. So the push is your boss. So I told him, in general, based on 1.5K people that I've coached, in general, when you're being pushed away from something, it is usually an emotional need to leave rather than a logical, economic thing to leave. Let's double down on this. When it's a pull scenario, typically is better pay. It's typically a better role. It's better, maybe geographically, I want to be closer to my family. So those are pulls. But it's the push scenarios where you have incompetent people who are being told by a great manager to change or do something they don't want to, but they start hating him because they think that they are the best thing since sliced cheese. And then they tell me, I need your help to move away. And I always tell them, if you leave, you're taking the same bad set of things that you used to do. And this is typical in selling. In selling, if you ain't making a quarter and you realize that it's because you're not doing enough dials. And if you leave and go to a company that expects you to do dials, but you are changing because you have not figured out what the emotional problem you're facing, or what things have you not changed in your behavior, you find all the excuses, but you never find the reasons for why you want to change. You go to the other side and guess what? The very same things that were making you unhappy here are going to pop up within 2 weeks, even if you got a 5% increase, because money, believe it or not, Tim, does not buy happiness. If it buys happiness, it's like a joint. It's going to buy you happiness for just maybe some time, but you're going to wake up with a headache, my friend. And that's when you realize, you know what? I don't know what happened there. Back to you, sir.
I love the analogy that you brought up there. For everyone listening and watching this, go back and re-listen to that and re-listen to that practical framework, because it's really going to change your perspective and how you take a look at some things. So Deepak, how can people find you and get a hold of you?
My wife says that all you have to do is just tell people your mistress's name and they'll line up. My mistress is LinkedIn. I am there 3 to 4 hours a day, Tim. Just holler Deepak Bhootra. I am the only Deepak Bhootra, because the other poor guys have got Deepak Bhootra 666, Deepak Bhootra 222, and -NZ, and they look like more like, car registration plates than anything else. So that's me. I'm there. Drop me a DM. I'm there. Absolutely, I'm available. You can find me, and if you go on the Google, just type Deepak and Tim, and I'm sure, Tim, you and I are going to figure this out. I'm most going to pop up somewhere, and there you are. But LinkedIn, primary source of finding me, sir.
But my last question for you is there anything that we didn't talk about or anything that I didn't ask you that you were like, you know what, Tim, I really wish you would ask me this question?
Tim, but absolutely. Now, I do know a lot of people tell me that, Deepak, you're so honest sometimes. From a very selfish point of view, Tim, I just want to tell you what I'm doing right now and what I'm building out, right? So Rise Up was the book I wrote. My publisher said to me, very proud of you writing a 500-page book, but now no one's going to buy it. He says 200 pages is sufficient, but 500 pages is a tome. I said, look, there are people who need weapons. So instead of buying a gun, buy my book so you can beat the crap out of a hijacker, right? And the publisher said, Deepak, just stop. How will you productize this? So I stepped back and I thought about it, and then I actually realized I wrote the big book for 21-year-olds entering the workforce who actually have no frame of reference. What do you need to do in the first 5 years so that it prevents mental harm? And I write this because I have close family members who suffered mental harm from work. I'll be honest, Tim. I have also gone through my own trauma. So, Tim, the point I'm trying to make is that we took Rise Up as an idea and we started debating and discussing it. I actually found a lead investor who says, I love this idea. I read your book. That you're onto something. Look, there's a probability that we will fail. I get that. That's life, right? There's also a probability, Tim, that by the time the podcast comes out, I'm not on the planet anymore, right? But that's not how we operate, right? You and I are here in good faith. Because if you and I decide that probabilities occur, then we should never be talking with, hey, we're going to die, we're going to die. So right now I'm actually fundraising on WeFunder, Tim. WeFunder.com/riseup@work. We are fundraising because I think we are onto something. We have a career progression thought process. We're building a platform. I'm really looking forward to having people, even if it's $100, contribute, support the journey that we're on. The platform goes live, and Tim, especially for you, sir, July 4th, my next version of the platform goes live. Before that, we actually had a test bed that we were testing the idea out, had 1,000 people testing it for us. Now on July 4th, as long as nothing else happens, right, Tim, the probability of getting hit by a truck, if that is zero, then I really am looking forward to the new platform. And I'm just working through that. So this platform is an opportunity we just call out that we are also looking at funding. We're looking at support. I'm looking for strategic advisors that can help guide us. That's where we find ourselves. But I'm pretty hyped up. At age 55, I really think I found my purpose, Tim.
That's amazing. And I think you have too. And I'm really excited about your platform coming out. I'll definitely check it out and take a look at it. For everyone listening and watching this, go into the descriptions. You're going to find the links to everything that he just talked about. So that way you can get a hold of him and his goodness and also possibly make a contribution as well to the platform coming up. And so, Deepak, I really appreciate you stopping on the show and listening and having this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for bringing your bus and getting me so that I could stop at your show on the way back. Thanks for being a great show offer. Enjoyed this, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.